So on that note, I want to bring in Gordon Robertson. Now it's kind of hard to. What do you say when you're introducing your boss? But I've been working at CBN, Christian Broadcasting Network, the 700 Club, in features and in news since 2003. And even though, it's not the highest paying place that you can work as a journalist, what I've noticed is that almost all the journalists that were there when I started are still there now. And the reason for that is because of the environment that they have crafted at the Christian Broadcasting Network. It's a place where we pray before we start everything, where we can really share with the people around us. And it's the least toxic work environment I've ever seen anywhere on this planet, any of the jobs I've ever had. And so that's one of the reasons that I'm still there and that I love being there. And Gordon has had a lot to do with that. Gordon Robertson is a lawyer, practiced law in Norfolk, Virginia for 10 years. He's married to Catherine. He's got 3 kids, and he is on the board of directors of the Christian Broadcasting Network. He's also the CEO of CBN and a host of the 700 Club. So it is a real honor and a privilege, and I say that as just with all my heart, to have you on with us today, Gordon. I really appreciate you taking your time to do that. You're obviously a really busy guy trying to keep all of us employed.
Well, thank you, Chuck. Thanks for that wonderful introduction. I'm not sure I'm worthy of it. I like to tell people I'm the black sheep son of Pat Robertson. When I was growing up, I knew God called me into ministry, but I saw how hard it was to be in ministry. And I said, that's too hard for me. And so I ran away from it. So I'm the rebel who became a lawyer. And then God got a hold of me. I got tricked into going on a mission trip to India, and it absolutely changed my life. And after seeing that and seeing how God wanted to use me, how could I refuse? So I left the law practice, became a missionary, moved my family to Manila, spent the next 5 years establishing CBN centers throughout Southeast Asia, first Manila, then Indonesia, then Thailand, Cambodia, Hong Kong, China, Delhi, and Hyderabad. So it was a very busy time, very fruitful time. And then God called me back to Virginia and sort of put me on the back burner for a while. And all of that was good and great training. I just want to share some of my personal journey and what God has been telling me since this pandemic hit. And we first started to, let's avoid airplane trips and let's avoid our normal workflow. All of that was back in the first week of March. Before I get to that, I just want to thank Jeff for that wonderful word, because I think it's a word for our time. Are we ready when we know we're going to get pounded? The Bible's kind of specific about this. In this world, you will have trouble. It will come. And so the issue is, are we ready? In the first part of this, I'll just be open. I actually was liking it because it was sort of a vacation. And it was wonderful not to be stuck in meetings all day. And I got reacquainted with my devotional life, and God started reminding me of the number of Sabbaths that I had missed. And I was too busy with the work of the ministry to spend time at his feet and just listen to him. I was very much a Martha and not a Mary. And how do I sort of turn all of that around? And then started getting images of the foolish virgins, which is sort of a strange parable to tell to a group of men. But, are we ready? Are we ready for when he comes? Do we have enough oil in our lamps that he can come in and shut the door and we can have fellowship with him? Or are we worried about the amount of oil that we have? In the first 2 weeks, my thought patterns tended to go pretty much exclusively as, how do I maintain payroll? Do I have sufficient cash reserves? What's the length of time here? And there's a lot of economic calculations. And You know, where are we going as a ministry? And it was very much how do we hunker down and survive, hoping for a reopening and things going back to what they used to be. It didn't take too long for me reading through some of the medical studies on this virus that I needed to give that up and really embrace this, what we're all calling now the new normal. And what does that mean, and how does CBN pivot? So in my devotional time, my newly discovered devotional time, God gave me a couple of verses, and I'll share them with you. The first one is from Exodus chapter 15. Therefore, I command you, you shall open wide your hand to your brother, to the needy, and to the poor in the land. That comes from Deuteronomy 15. That's the same chapter that Jesus uses when he says, the poor will always be with you. That's actually a quote from Deuteronomy. Jesus would lean hard on Deuteronomy. It's a wonderful Bible study to look at the number of times he quotes from Deuteronomy. But this, in my devotional time, this really, if you will, leapt out at me. We've all had times where we're studying the Bible and certain words seem to catch fire. And this one really sort of caught fire with me. And if you're looking for a New Testament parallel, it's from 1 Corinthians 10. Let no one seek his own good, but the good of his neighbor. And that got me interested in, well, what's happening and where are the poor and the needy in the land? I've asked Chuck to play just one video. It's just 2 minutes, and I'll tell you why I'm playing it after it's done. It's a food distribution that Operation Blessing did in Irving, Texas.
Many people now rely on food banks to help feed their families. In Irving, Texas, Operation Blessing partner Agape Connect is doing all they can to help those in need.
It's been pretty rough. My wife and I got fired from our jobs. I've been without a job for a month already, and we're living out of our savings basically because there's no sort of income.
Food is scarce in the stores and running out of everything, and just trying to maintain the bills and the online schooling with the kids. And it's hard, but we're making it through. It's very stressful and frustrating.
Schools are still providing meals to kids, but administrators know many families need extra support. The Irving School District called Agape Connect, and Agape Connect called Operation Blessing.
Because of Operation Blessing, we're able to feed several thousand families today.
To keep everyone safe, people drive through and have groceries placed into their cars. Thanks to Operation Blessing partners, parents like Jacqueline are able to feed their families.
I'm able to put just some type of food to give to my kids. As long as they're good, I'm happy. So this actually, is a blessing that I'm able to provide for my children.
It means a lot to me, to my family, to all of us who lost our jobs. I really appreciate it. It really, really means a lot.
Not a whole lot of people stepped up, but Operation Blessing did.
Just from the bottom of my heart, thank you. And not just for me, but many families out there as well. God bless you.
All right.
Let me tell you why I'm showing you that. That's a visual that is frankly astounding. The first time we did that, that story is from the second time. The first time we did that, the police in Irving, Texas, actually got mad at us because we had a line of 1,000 cars waiting for that food distribution to start, and it was blocking traffic. And so they got mad, and when they found out what we were doing, they said, well, how can we turn this around and help you? But on that particular one, there were 1,400 cars lined up for hours before we started. That's a visual to show you just how bad it is in America today. I don't know of many things that illustrate 33 million people being unemployed, but that will. The last time I saw cars like that lined up, was during the oil crisis in the late 70s, where people would wait in line, and we had the odd and even days, and you could see lines of cars. But 1,400 cars is a lot of cars. There's a huge amount of need right here in America right now. And how does the church rise up to meet it? I've been reading through the chat room, and I know all of you are men of action. You don't tend to sit around when problems are there and do nothing. And let me encourage you in what you're currently doing, please do more. Open your hand wide, because right now, Americans are in need. These are hardworking people who have lost their job because of nothing that they did. An invisible enemy has come within our midst, and we need to really step up and meet it. The demand for food for Operation Blessing has increased 40%, and that started in the first 2 weeks in March. And my whole orientation for everything we're doing now is how do we pivot and meet that need? And it's not just here in America. We're trying to do this around the world. America, we've got the most infrastructure, if you will, for food distribution. But this is something that literally every church, every Christian right now is needed in this battle. This is absolutely incredible what is happening, not just here in America, but around the world. And the UN, I'm not sure I'm a big fan of the UN, but they're warning of famine shortages for Africa. You know, you look at infrastructure in Africa, you guys have been to Somalia, you know firsthand what it's like. And literally people are going to be starving. So how do we meet that? And how do we go out? The task can seem sometimes insurmountable. One of my first food distributions was back in Asia, a place called Payatas outside of Manila, and it was a place where people made a living. Wasn't much of a living. It was roughly $1 a day, digging through trash, and their daily meal was usually somebody else's thrown out food, and they would try to scrape enough just to get some rice, and they would sometimes put some kind of flavoring on the rice. But we did a food distribution, and we gave them enough food to last for 2 weeks. And as I'm giving out the food, I'm got a question running around in my head: what happens after the 2 weeks? And it really kind of overwhelmed me, and you know, it made me think I was, whatever it was I'd been doing was not really making a difference in their lives. At the end of the 2 weeks, when the food was gone, they were still in the same situation they were. As I was leaving that, one of the producers with 700 Club Asia could obviously see my distress. And God spoke to her, and she in turn spoke to me. And she told me a parable about a great storm that had come and had cast a bunch of starfish up on the beach. And a man came along the beach and started picking up starfish and throwing it back in the ocean. And someone criticized him for doing that, saying, well, see, this whole beach is full. You can't possibly save them all. And he bent down, picked up another one, and threw it back in the ocean and said, well, I just saved that one. We can't necessarily take care of all of the problem, but we can take care of the problem near us, and we can take care of one. Some of us can take care of more than that, but realize the scripture requires us to open our hand wide and take care of the poor and the needy. So for those of you who are doing that, let this word be a word of encouragement. This is on the heart of God. He's asking us to step up. He's asking us to do more. He's asking us to do it wide and do it broad and do it continually and do it daily and keep on doing it, and don't get weary doing it. We will yet reap a great harvest if we don't give up. So be encouraged in what you're doing. Be energized to do even more. Now, while you're doing this, the other word that has come to me is the word that Jesus gives to Peter as he's being restored. You find it at the end of the Gospel of John. Jesus has made a wonderful breakfast for his disciples, and they're having breakfast on the beach at the shore of the Sea of Galilee. And he asked Peter, do you love me? And the response that would come from Jesus after Peter would say, Lord, you know I do. The response is unique. Feed my sheep. We've got a quite tangible feeding of the sheep that needs to happen right now. But we also need to realize people need spiritual food as well. I've always interpreted that as a spiritual message as opposed to a physical. And these days we get to do both. But you can't feed people spiritually if you don't have it within yourself. So I'll come back full circle to Exodus chapter 20 and remind everyone the Sabbath is a commandment, and we have to honor it. It is a sacred day unto the Lord. And in that time, whether it's a daily devotional time or the full day that's required to take a Sabbath rest, spend time with God. He will show you a way. For those of you that are running businesses or now, what do I do? I've lost my job. How do I reinvent myself? In that Sabbath time, use Jeremiah 33, verse 3. I call it God's phone number. He says, call to me and I will answer you and show you great and mighty things that you do not know. I've been spending a lot of time with God, calling out to him, saying, Lord, show me the way forward. What do you want CBN to do? What do you want Operation Blessing to do? How do we pivot into this new digital transmission? How do we pivot all of the humanitarian work that we do so that we can do it safely, not just for us as providers, but also for the recipient? We don't want to be spreading this virus. How do we do it? Give us ideas. And it's been astounding how many fresh ideas are coming out of the staff. And we're having these incredible productive meetings, rich with ideas, because we're spending time with the Lord, calling to him, and then he is answering us. He is showing us the way forward. He will do that for you if you just spend the time at his feet, reading his word and saying, Lord, what's the way forward? What do you want me to do? How do you want me to do it? You are the God of details. Give me the details and show me what you want me to do. He will answer that question. Ask it humbly. He will answer it. Well, that's my short message for today.
Take the spotlight.
It's been great being with you.
Thank you very much, Gordon. Folks, the government of the United States has been trying to put together these multi-trillion-dollar packages to try to keep people from literally starving to death. And I just want you to think for a minute how inefficient that is. The government comes and takes money from you and I in the form of taxes. We know that the government is tremendously inefficient as a bureaucracy to begin with, and that for every dollar that they collect in taxes, only about 60 cents of that dollar gets back out the door in the form of programs. And so that gives them a 40% overhead. There's so much friction in government. There's so much waste in government that there's a 40% overhead. And in reality, what they're trying to do are the things that the church is commanded to do, to take care of the widows and orphans and the poor and the infirm. It's our job to take care of the people who are hurting. It's not the government's job to do it. And you might say, well, this job's too big for us. Is there any job too big for God? And when you look at these parallel structures of government, like Operation Blessing, and you look at the difference when it comes to the efficiencies involved there, the overhead for Operation Blessing is somewhere below 7%. And I would say that actually far below that in reality because of the way that Operation Blessing employs its money around the globe. I've been working with them and reporting on them for many, many years now. And I can tell you, if Operation Blessing sends $1 million someplace, the people of that place get the benefit of a whole lot more than $1 million, because what we do is we go around to other entities in that area, whether they're governmental, non-governmental, or commercial, and we say, hey, we've got trucks. If you want to donate anything, we're paying for the transportation. We'll take it into the people. And so our $1 million might turn into $5 million worth of help for the people that are involved. See, that is what happens when the people of God come together and give of themselves. But there's one more thing that happens that I would say is the more important thing, and that is that people see who we are in Christ. You see, when everything's good and there's all this material prosperity in the way, people just don't feel a need for God. But I can guarantee you there's 33 million people right now crying out to God in the United States at least. And when they see that their neighbor who's a believer is giving of himself, and when he doesn't have to do it, and even though he's probably in a financial hardship himself right now, but he is joyfully giving to those around him, that's when people start to say, man, I want what that guy has. And we will not just change their present, we will change their eternity. That's what this is about, guys.